straight and tall, lift your chest well. You can sit in Virasana or Swastikasana. Both of those have relevance for our work today. We're starting a new series, our new set of poses in Lotus Yoga. Week 19, week 20, and week 21. So if you want to be looking by those, you can. Why is this not working? Come on. I want to be able to see you. Then inhale up from the tailbone all the way up through the head. Keep that height, and as you exhale, draw the prana, the energy of the breath, outward toward your side ribs and armpits. Inhale, make yourself tall. Keep that height. Exhale, make yourself broad. Inhale, extend yourself. Exhale, expand yourself. Use the breath to create a sense of inner spaciousness, much like you're trying to organize the room of your yoga space. Fiddle with the technology. All right, it's gonna work today. I'm gonna give up. All right. But when you do that, you change the external prana of the situation that you find yourself in. And that external prana has an influence on the internal prana. Similarly, when you create internal space inside the body, that changes your relationship of, let's say, the mind with the body. And so the mind wants to draw itself from the outer world toward the inner world, that inner landscape of you, the domain of yoga. Use your exhalations to take your awareness there. In each inhalation and each exhalation, there is a pause when the exhalation becomes the inhalation and the inhalation becomes the exhalation. It happens naturally in the breathing process. It's just simply how the breath works. But one of the things that Patanjali says that we can do as a concrete means of stilling the fluctuations of the mind, and more specifically, removing the obstacles towards seeing the inner self, is he says that you can watch the exhalation and watch the pause that occurs at the end of each exhalation. It might be very brief, but there's a little quietude at the end of the exhalation, at the end of the inhalation. And as you watch those pauses, based on my experience, the mind begins to take on the qualities of that pause, so that the mind becomes more serene, more sattvic, more still. And from that still place within, chant 3 yams together. Om. Follow that sound with your mind. Follow the reverberation of the sound with your mind. From that space, inhale once more. Keeping your chest well lifted and broad, bring your chin down to your chest and your hands down to your thighs with your palms up. And then raise your head and open your eyes. Then go ahead and switch the cross of your legs if you're in Swastikasana. And then if you do have your light in yoga, go ahead and get it out. I just want to point out, we're not going to do the whole sequence because it's way too long. Okay. But there are a lot of things that happen in week 19 and 20 and 21. First of all, it's 3 whole weeks spending on these poses, which is a lot. First thing is he adds some, it still has Shirshasana first, and then he adds a couple of Shirshasana variations. My own neck right now can't take right away doing Shirshasana, and so we're not really going to do much with those, but do notice he's also added Salamba Sarvangasana right after Shirshasana at the very beginning of the practice. And what I take that to mean is that it's an indication of you could start there, right? But it's also to me an indication that it's fine to separate off your inversions from the rest of your practice, right? So you might do like an asana practice without the inversions in the morning, or maybe in the afternoon, you might want to do your inversion practices, or maybe you don't have a lot of time in any particular given day. And so maybe say, oh, you know what, I'm just really going to do my inversions today. So that's what I take from that. And we'll look at some of them. But he does add in a lot of things to the Sarvangasana part of things. And he adds in Niralamba 1 and Niralamba 2 and Salamba Sarvangasana 2. So we'll work a little bit on the arm position of that today. Then he has the abdominal work, which we've been doing, the belly down back bends, which we've been doing. Okay. Then if you go up, then he adds in some new forward bends of Trianga Mukha Ekapada Paschimottanasana. And this week is also the first week that Padmasana occurs at all in the sequences in the back of the book. It occurs in Ardha Vada Paschimottanasana, Marichyasana 2, and also in Bharadvajasana 1, Bharadvajasana 2. And he also adds in several seated forward bends, which we haven't really had in the sequences before, and Ubaya Padangusthasana. So that's a lot, that's a lot to be working on for 3 weeks here. So we're going to do some of that work. Okay. So go ahead and sit up straight and tall here again. Turn the soles of the feet up toward the ceiling. Suck your outer ankles in, your outer calves, and feel how that lift comes all the way up into the chest when you do that. Okay. And lengthen up through the side ribs, and then swing your arms around to put your left hand on the outside of the right knee and the right hand behind you on the bolster or the floor or over it. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. And as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around to the right. As you inhale, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. And as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around a little bit more. And in that rotation, just feel how the abdomen moves from left to right, the ribs move from left to right, and your collarbone gets broader. And when you come back to the center, push down with both hands and swing yourself all the way back to the center, and then do the same thing to the other side. Push your feet down and energetically lift your ankles up. Extend that lift all the way up from the tailbone through the head. And as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around to the left. With that exhalation, you should really feel the abdomen moves from right to left, the front ribs move from right to left, and keep your collarbone broad. And one more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. And as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around, pushing with your hand on the leg and pushing with your hand on the bolster to turn. And push down with both hands, lengthen up again, and come all the way back to the center. And then stretch your legs out into Dandasana and switch the cross of your legs again. Press the tops of the feet down and energetically lift your ankles up. Lengthen up through the side ribs and roll your shoulder bones back. And then swing your arms around again. I know we're kind of uneven on lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. And exhale, turn and rotate. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. See if you can get a little bit deeper the second time around. Then push down with your hands, come back to the center. And I think we'll be even with the legs if we cross the legs and do our uncross the legs the opposite way. And then do one more turn to the left. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. One more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. And then swing yourself back to the center. And then stretch your legs out into Dandasana. Join your big toes together and spread your other toes wide apart. Draw up from the little toe side of the foot into the outer hips. And push down with your hands and up into the armpits. Right, now sit in Virasana. So this is all a kind of exploration of the Virasana, let's say Virasana, Padmasana, and Bharadvajasana, little cluster of poses that are in here. So now we're in Virasana. It's like I'm up on a bolster, but you don't have to be up that high. It's like your outer ankles in, your outer calves in, and your outer hips in, and feel even additional lift come all the way into the chest. Then swing your arms around again to the right, Ardha Virasana. Extend up from the tailbone through the head, and as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. One more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate, and then push down with your hands and come back to the center and swing your arms around to the opposite side. It's like your outer ankles in, your outer calves in, and your outer hips in, and then lengthen up from the tailbone through the head, and then push with your hand against your leg and push with your hand on the bolster to rotate yourself around. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. One more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate, and then come back to the center. Okay. All right, so basically, and then just go ahead and stretch your legs out into downward facing dog and your arms up so they can work towards standing. Open the backs of the knees. Okay, so like I said, Bharadvajasana 1 and Bharadvajasana 2 appear in this particular week. So for Bharadvajasana 1, and what you're doing is really combining the swastikasana turn that we just did and the virasana turn that we just did. So stretch your legs out into Dandasana, then bring your right leg underneath the left leg in swastikasana. Then put your left foot in virasana on top of your right foot, and then fold a blanket so you're sitting a little bit more evenly. And then you may need a brick back behind you. Okay, so now we've got swastikasana leg and we've got virasana leg, right? And then we've got the twist only. So lengthen up from the tailbone through the head, and then exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. And as you're doing each of those twists, just observe how the change of the leg position influences where you feel the twist in your back. Okay? So here I'm noticing when my legs are actually in Bharadvajasana 1, I feel much more of a release across the back part of my lower back. Lengthen than I did in either of the other two previous poses. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. Really push with your hand on your leg. Push the block energetically in the way that you're turning, and turn a little bit more. Then come back to the center. Stretch your legs out into Dandasana again. Swing your left leg into swastikasana underneath your right leg. And put your right foot or right leg with the foot on top of the other foot in virasana, and sit in Bharadvajasana 1 on this other side. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. One more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. All right, then swing your legs back into Dandasana. All right, so that's the legs of Bharadvajasana 1. Okay. Then we're going to go toward Bharadvajasana 2, but we're going to do some other things first. All right, another pose that gets introduced this week is at the end of the sequence, but we're going to do it earlier, is Baddha-Konasana. All right, so we haven't done that yet. I'm taking the support of the wall, and you can sit on a little height if you want to. But take your right hand on the inside of your right knee and pull your leg up like you're doing half tree pose. Okay. So this has shown up before in the forward bend Mahamudra, right? Okay. Then take that leg out of the way, and then do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so here half Baddha Konasana showed up in Mahamudra. Okay. So then in this next week, you get both legs, and here you are in Baddha Konasana. Press the soles of the feet together. Extend from the groin to the inner knee. And the more you press the soles of the feet together, the more you get some nice firmness in the outer hips. All right, then place your hands on the outside of the knee and stretch your legs all the way out. All right, and lie down on the floor for a little bit of hip work laying down, and we'll sit back up and put some of these other pieces together. I'm just switching to gallery view so I can see you. Okay, so come into Supta Tadasana.
And
yep,
I've been having trouble with bursitis in my hips. So if you could just take that into consideration and any modifications I need to do. Thank you.
All right. First thing is, even if I don't say to sit up on any height, you want to sit up on height. Okay, so like I was just on the floor there. Okay. So that's one thing you want to do, is make sure you have adequate height. And the other thing is, for instance, when we go into Supta Padangusthasana 2 off to the side, I often do this myself because I have a groin injury. You want to make sure that you're supporting your outer hip, okay? And just, you want to be aware of things that feel like are aggravating any of the inflammation that might be in that joint. And so you want to do things in such a way that you find things to be soothing on the joint. All right, and mostly that means really making sure your outer hips are firm, so your inner groin and your inner leg can relax. That's my two biggest pieces of advice. So thanks for letting me know. Okay. All right, and we'll get to one of those really quickly. All right, so come into Supta Tadasana, and you can, well, actually, just start off with your knees bent first. Okay. It's easier in the lower back. Then hold on to the sides of the sticky mat with your hands and pull. And you'll feel those buttock flesh move toward your feet, and hopefully you feel your abdomen draw in toward the spine as well. Okay. Then keep pulling on the sticky mat with your hands and stretch your left leg out and stretch your right leg out. And then extend through both shin bones. I've been saying that this is something I've happened upon in the last 2 or 3 weeks, that if you extend through your shin bones, or I was reminded of it, that actually takes your top thighs down for you in a much more integrated way than if I just say press the tops of the thighs down to the floor, then it's just the thigh working. But if you say extend through the shin bone, the thigh does go down to the floor, and it should feel just more, let's say, integrated in the work of the legs. So keep extending through your left shin bone, bend your right leg up and put your right leg, the strap on the heel arch connection, and bring your right foot up just halfway into the first stage of Supta Padangusthasana 1. Then extend through both shin bones and make your foot, both feet actually, be like a Virasana foot. So they're going to be a little bit pointed actually. So this shows up obviously in Ekapada Shirshasana this week and Ekapada Sarvangasana, but it's its own pose here. Okay. We're actually doing these things as a way of introducing Padmasana, hopefully in the most easy way to do it. Okay, so from the back ribs, extend across the back buttocks and pull your right leg up. Then, okay, so for the hip and the bursitis, so I'm doing it for my inner groin, but it works on the outer hip as well. This is why I use the brick when we go into Supta Padangusthasana too. Because when I use the brick, it helps my outer hip draw in, because I can actually feel it on the brick. And that engages those leg muscles, and then I can actually get a little bit of a release. My inner groin feels, let's say, safer to relax. Whereas if your outer hips aren't really working, what happens is that the inner part of the hip grips, let's say, just to kind of feels like it's going to hold the leg in place on its own. I mean, that's overly dramatic. All right, so in order to get release in the inner groin, you have to work very firmly in the outer hip, right? So that's why I have the brick here the first time around, to make sure that my outer femur bone moves in. Okay. All right, then another piece of this with the twisting is take your left hand and put it on your right pelvic bone. And as you exhale, move your abdomen from right to left. Exhale again and push down on the left side of your abdomen and connect that downward movement of the abdomen with the extension of the shin on the left leg. Okay, so that's all that's going on in Supta Padangusthasana too. It's quite a bit actually. All right, then bring the leg back up to Supta Padangusthasana 1. Now you're going to roll over onto the little toe side of your hip. The little toe side of your left leg. And here's another modification that you can use. Here's the brick, and I've made it be tall. I'll just show some of the side you can see. Okay, I would be rolling to the other side, but when you're in Supta Padangusthasana, Parivrtta Supta Padangusthasana, it can be a little much on the hips sometimes. I actually really like, but see how I've got my foot on the brick? Yeah. So that's going to keep me from going too far down to the floor, because sometimes when I go too far down to the floor, that pops the outer hip outward in a way that, and you want it to draw in. So if you just give yourself a little bit of support on the brick, then it's much more, it actually feels really nice. Everyone should try this even if you don't have hip issues. So when we go over onto the right, you're on the little toe side of your left foot, and you've rolled over there, and if you put the brick on, so you have some support for your right leg, and you can feel the difference for yourself. For me, it feels actually, now that I've decided to do it, it feels a lot more spacious on the inside of the pelvic region. And I can actually feel a different kind of movement or rotation from the left pelvic bone to the right. And push your hands down and get a little bit more turn. Then swing your leg back up. Make sure you have the strap. Now, if you still need support on your outer hip, another thing you can do that's still supportive, but not as much as the brick, is that you can put a little bit of blanket roll down on your outer hip as you come back into Supta Padangusthasana 2. And that second Supta Padangusthasana 2 should feel really nice and spacious on the abdomen. Okay. Then, here comes the Padmasana. Okay. Close the fold of the knee and point your foot. You may need to move the blanket out of the way. Externally rotate your leg and see if you can get the little toe side of your right foot up to the top of the thigh. Now you may, at that point, want to put some more support under your outer right leg. Because when you have that, that actually worked for me. So I put some support under my right leg and I could immediately feel some of the tightness on the inside of my right groin release. So that's how we're first working Padmasana. Now keep your leg, to come out of Padmasana, keep your leg bent, but pull the leg into Ardha Pavanuttasana. Flex your foot. Then straighten your leg back up to Supta Padangusthasana 1. Then make your foot do Virasana and really engage the muscles of the legs, particularly around the knee joint. And then lower your leg all the way down to the floor. And as you're here, see, you should feel a pretty big difference between your right leg and your left leg. It should feel like almost automatically it's getting extended through the shin bones. And that difference and your ability to feel that difference, first of all, is one of the biggest benefits of yoga practice, is the ability to discern. To discern what is the case. And when you discern what is the case, you're more able to act with judicious judgment. Okay, so now let's do the second side. I was just trying to give the technology one more try, but it's not working. So there's like nothing else to press. Oh well. Okay, so let's see if we can remember how we did all of that. First, you're gonna pull your right leg up, left leg up into Supta Padangusthasana 1. Okay. Start off in the 90-degree angle because it's easier to get the leg straight here. Okay. Extend through both shin bones and then really work on making your foot, particularly the one in the air, but also the one on the floor, into a Virasana foot. Okay, so it's slightly pointed. Okay. It's like you would be turning the foot over. Then just to get the hamstrings going a little bit, exhale from your back left rib over the buttocks and pull your leg in a little bit closer to your torso. Then, Supta Padangusthasana 2. Now, first time around, I'm going to use the brick. I don't really need it on this left hip as much as the right hip, but I'm going to use it anyway. Another just little tiny refinement is if you angle your brick slightly, okay, so that it's like a V going toward your tailbone, that's a little bit more of the shape of how your hip is in the socket, and it gives better support. Okay, so move your left leg off to the left for Supta Padangusthasana 2. You'll feel the hardness of the brick, foam brick, so it's not super hard. And then what that does, it is support, but it's also something that teaches, hopefully, you yourself, how do you contract those muscles in the outer hips so that they do their work and you get release on the inner groin. Okay. That's the basically hip opening in a nutshell. Okay. All right. And then also, just because we're working on the twisting too, notice that the abdomen does move from left to right. And then on an exhalation, move the right side of your abdomen just on the inside of the right pelvic bone down and connect that downward movement of the abdomen with the extension of the right shin. All right, now we're going to go over into Supta Parivrtta Supta Padangusthasana. So you're going to lift your leg up. You can take the same brick and put it on its tall space, and then roll all the way over onto the little toe side of your right foot. You may have to move yourself a little bit or move your brick. And so the brick now supports the left foot, but really the whole left leg. And you still have to work to keep the bottom right leg very active, extend through both shin bones. And now the abdomen moves from right to left. Your front ribs move from right to left, and your collarbone is broad. Okay. It's called Parivrtta Supta Padangusthasana. From there, bring the leg back up. Maybe second time around on the hips, you don't need quite so much support. So I'm just going to take a little bit of blanket, put it underneath my outer hip. And then I can go out a little bit more, but there's still that suggestion of support on the outer hip that should let you release the inner groin. And also observe the extra spaciousness of the abdomen. Okay, then here comes the Padmasana. Close the fold of the knee and point your foot like Virasana. To get into Padmasana, you may need to move the blanket a bit so you can externally rotate the leg. Put the little toe side of the foot on top of the thigh. Then once you're there, move the blanket where now it's supporting in the Padmasana position. And when you do that, or at least when I do that, just taking the time to take a little bit of outer hip support, automatically I felt a release on the inside of my left groin, inside of my left pelvis. Now you can make that movement also with your outer hip if you should, but just the prop itself gives you a lot of work. All right, now to come out of Padmasana safely, you're going to keep the knee bent. Hold the leg into Ardha Pavanmuktasana. Go ahead and flex your foot because we got Malasana in this sequence too, and Vrajyasana 1. So that's a flexed foot. Then stretch your legs up. Really engage the quadricep, but really focus on the quadricep that's closest to the knee. And get that to move in so that the musculature of the knee gets stronger as we're working on the pliability required in the knees in Padmasana. All right, then lower yourself back down and bend your knees, roll to your side, and then push yourself up and then sit back up. And everyone get a bolster. And just have it nearby. Now, some people can do Baddha Konasana and Padmasana really easily, like Bob can just go into Padmasana, but other people can't. So when I sit on the floor for Baddha Konasana without any support, and both, well, actually this is a lot better than the first time around. If I sit without any support, my knees are significantly higher than my pelvic bones. And just sitting here, and that is hard on the knees, it's hard on the groin, and it's hard on the back. Even if you're not in any actual pain while you're doing that, it's very hard to get the extension that you need through the inner legs when you're in this configuration and shape, okay? So just felt that. Okay. So when you take the time, I mean, this is more support than I need, but I've got this bolster here, but it'll feel good. Okay. I've got this bolster here. Okay. Sitting up on the bolster, then it's not quite Baddha Konasana with my feet. Now when I'm sitting up high, my knees are more or less now level with my pelvic bones. And that I already, as I'm sitting here, feel a release in the groin that comes. And also my outer hips have more ability to get firm, and my lower back also feels more spacious and broad. Okay. So that's what I was talking about taking the support that you need for the hips in Baddha Konasana, okay, or any of the seated poses really. It's worth the time to actually get the prop. Okay, so we're going to put all of that together now into Vrajyasana 1. Moving into Vrajyasana 2, which is also on this particular sequence. Okay. So reviewing Virabhadrasana 1, you're going to bring your right leg underneath your left leg. Okay, so that's swastikasana. That's also preparation for Padmasana here. It's external rotation. Then pull your left leg, put your left foot on top of the right foot. So it's a little bit of foot meshing here. And then take what height you need to be able to sit, where your hips are more or less level, and that both of your knees are significantly lower than your pelvic bone. Right, so that's Virabhadrasana 1. Right, then lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. Inhale, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. One more rotation and then come back to the center. So to get from Virabhadrasana 1 to Virabhadrasana 2, all I have to do is get the right foot from underneath and put it on top, in theory, right? Okay, so to go toward that, you might not need height here. You can actually bring your right foot into Baddha Konasana. So this leg is still in Virasana, but now you've got the leg in Baddha Konasana. Sometimes I call this Virabhadrasana 1.5. Okay, because it's halfway between. Okay, I also really like this version of the pose for lower back issues. Is you have to keep your Virasana leg has to stay really firm, and then you can push your Baddha Konasana leg, into your Virasana leg. And then now try turning and rotating. And in this position, it really feels good on my lower back. I just really like how it feels. Then come back to the center. So that's halfway. So now, can you lean over, get your hand underneath your foot, and just bring your leg up into Padmasana if you can. Now I'm okay on the floor on this side. I'm a little bit tippy. So I'm going to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my little blanket, come out of Padmasana, take my little blanket, sit up on a little bit of height. So now I'm a little bit more even. And then my leg can come down to the floor. Then here you are. And if everything's okay here, if it feels too aggravating though, for anyone, you just go back to Baddha Konasana or Swastikasana if you feel like Padmasana is too much. Okay. And then turn and rotate. And then notice the different feeling again in the lower back when your foot is on top of your thigh. Now there's a whole story we can then let go with the leg. There's a whole story, and then Baddha Konasana, Marichyasana, Marichyasana, Dandasana. There's also a whole story that we could trace with the shoulders in terms of making the bind. But for our purposes today, we're really just focusing on the positions of the new positions that come with the leg. Okay. All right, so do a nice work in Dandasana. Then swing your left leg underneath your Dandasana leg. And then put your other leg in Virasana. I'm just hoping, it's hope that now my computer will work so I can actually see y'all. And do Virabhadrasana 1 again. Oh well. Okay. And come back to the center. And then we're in Virabhadrasana 1. So now we're going to do again what I call Virabhadrasana 1.5. Okay. You're going to move your Swastikasana leg to Baddha Konasana. Maybe you can sit on the floor, and this one I usually can without being too tippy, but you might need a little bit of height. Now, the trick of this in terms of the lower back is you really got to keep that the right shin bone really firm and push your foot into your thigh, just like you're doing Vrikshasana, and then turn and rotate yourself around. Really push with that foot against the thigh, and you'll really feel a nice release coming across the lower back. And one more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. Then swing back to the center. Now I know I'm gonna need to sit up on some height for Padmasana. So before I even get myself into Padmasana, I'm gonna raise my buttock up on my Baddha Konasana side. Then I'm just gonna bring that leg into Padmasana. Now that's a little bit more height than I need, but here I am. Then if I had an extra blanket handy, I could put something underneath my knee so it would ground, but I don't have it right near me and I don't want to get up again. All right, and then turn and rotate into Bharavajasana 2. Again, feel the difference of how each of these Bharavajasanas affects your lower back. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. Inhale, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. Then one more time, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. And come back to the center. Bring your leg back to Baddha Konasana. And again, just like we did laying down, keeping the fold of the knee, hold the leg up like you're doing Marichiyasana 1. And then stretch your legs out into Dandasana. And bring the other leg into Dandasana. Okay, so that's the story of Bharavajasana 1, at least with respect to the legs, moving toward Bharavajasana 2. Now, interestingly, in this sequence, there's a similar introduction of leg action into the forward bends that we've been doing, because he introduces both Triangamukha Ekapada Paschimottanasana, okay, and Padmasana, or an Ardha Padma Paschimottanasana. So you have a couple of blankets handy, okay? And have a brick handy and have a strap handy. And you may have to, for each of these seated positions, you may really have to change the height that you're using, okay? Because each hip is just a little bit different. Not each, yeah, you might need to change between sides, but each position is different. Okay, so the first pose that he gives in the seated forward bends is Mahamudra. Okay, we're not going to do Mahamudra in terms of the breathing, but we are going to do the shape of the pose. So take your right hand on the inside of the right knee and pull your leg up into half Baddha Konasana. So here you are, half Baddha Konasana. Put just like Bharavajasana 1.5. Push the foot and the thigh against each other. Take your hand on the leg and rotate your torso a little bit so that the torso is straight in line with the opposite leg. Then get a strap. Lasso your foot with the strap. And then you're going to extend forward just into the concave shape of the pose. Then all of these we're just going to do upright and concave. Lift your chest well. Don't even worry about the Jalandhara Bandha here because we're just really exploring these actions from the perspective of the hips. All right. Then from Mahamudra, move your leg out a little bit wider, and that's Janu Shirshasana. We've had that one already. Okay. There's external rotation of the leg, but you should be more on the top of the foot like you are when you're in Virasana. Okay. And take your right hand on the inside of the leg again, externally rotate. And here's a little bit of a twist. Because the leg is further away, you actually have to twist your torso, and from the lower abdomen particularly, so your torso lines up with your leg. Then, lasso your foot. Do the upright stage first, and then push your legs down into the floor, and then walk a little bit forward. If you can get your foot great, or you can just hold on to the strap. Lengthen up from the side ribs and roll your shoulders back and lift your chest well. Okay. So those are the known poses. Let's do that much on the other side. Another thing about forward bending and hip things, if we were going to fold all the way forward, okay, there's also this little technique that you can use of rolling the blanket and giving yourself a little bit of space in the front of the hip socket. But we're not going that far today, so you don't need to do that until maybe Paschimottanasana at the end. Okay, right hand on the inside of the right knee, pull your leg up. So it's just like half Baddha Konasana. And you can use your hand to give yourself more external rotation. You can use your hand to give yourself more length. You can push down with your hand and it'll give you more depth in the groin. And just experiencing all of those things hopefully will give you some release of tension on the hip muscles. Then fold forward, get your strap on your foot, turn your biceps up toward the ceiling and pull on the strap and roll those shoulders back so you get a nice lift in the chest. Now really push your foot and your thigh in against each other and feel that link that comes into the spine. Mahamudra leg position, just like Bharavajasana 1.2. Then move your Janu Shirshasana knee off to the side and you have to point your foot. Okay, so you're really more on the top of the foot, not quite on the top of the shin bone, but moving that way. And take your hand, externally rotate the leg, suck the femur bone in, push the leg down, lengthen the groin. All of those are things that you can do with the help of the hand. Then think about the Bharavajasana turn here. Abdomen turns from left to right as you're trying to line up the torso with your extended Janu Shirshasana leg. Right. Then lasso your foot again. Push both the thigh down and the hamstring down and lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Pull on your strap and roll your shoulders back and lift the strap a little bit so you get even a little bit more lift with the chest. All right, and then release. Stretch your leg out. All right, now here are the new things. He actually does Paschimottanasana, Triangamukha first. So here you got blanket ready. Then bring your right leg into Virasana. Now I'm tippy here. So what that means is I have to push myself up. I actually sit on my heel at first. And then I have my blanket. And now my legs are in Triangamukha Ekapada Paschimottanasana. So it's just like the Bharavajasana, Virasana leg, but you've got your leg out straight. Then either reach forward and get your foot or use the strap. Lengthen from the tailbone through the head, pull on your foot and roll those shoulders back. Move the biceps up toward the ceiling. You'll feel the difference of this forward bend in the hips and in the lower back and also in the ability to lift the chest. Then come back to the upright stage. Stretch that leg out well into Dandasana. And you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Okay, so bring your left leg into Virasana. My own technique is when I put the belt, I actually like to sit on the heel at first because that helps me extend through my shin bone. But then when I put the blanket in, the foot actually has to go on the outside of the left hip because eventually your buttocks are going to be sitting on the floor as you do this particular pose. All right, then fold forward. We'll get the strap or get your foot. You're not really folding forward. You're going into the concave stage. Tuck your outer ankles in, your outer calves in, and extend up through the sides of the body and roll the shoulders back. Everyone I can see looks pretty good. Your chest is really looking nice and open. Right, and then come back to the center and stretch that leg out into Dandasana. Right, then there's also Ardha Vada Padma Paschimottanasana. So, thinking about that, come back to Mahamudra just for a second. From Mahamudra, move your leg out to Janu Shirshasana so that the thighs are already turned. Then it's a similar situation at this point when we remember how we had to go from Bharavajasana 1 when the leg was underneath, getting the leg on top. So here this leg is basically in Swastikasana. You're going to get underneath the foot, hold the knee if you need to, get underneath the shin, and then keeping the knee low, you're going to bring your foot up to the top of the thigh. Now I can see, I could bear it here, but truthfully, particularly since we're talking about hip things, I'm going to try that again. But I'm going to say, Anne, even though you could sit there and deal with the tightness that you're feeling in that groin, rather than actually taking the effort to get up and get another blanket, I do in my hips say, I do really need that extra support today, particularly on this side. And so I went ahead and got it. I'm sitting up on the side. So then I go Janu Shirshasana, Baddha Konasana. Already I can feel that just taking the height underneath me gives me more release in the groin. Then I'm going to bring the leg up. My knee isn't quite down. It's going down, so I'm just gonna fill up the space. So here I am in Ardha Baddha Padma Paschimottanasana. If that feels too much, you just back off. And by too much, I just mean more than your knee can tolerate, more than your mind can tolerate, more than your groin can tolerate. You back off and do one of the other poses. Okay? Then lasso your foot. And then fold forward. Now, when I fold forward, just in that little concave stage, that releases my groin enough so that my knee actually now does go down to the floor. So I can get rid of my knee blanket at that point. For me, all these seated hip work, forward bending work, it's very much a moving target, and I have to just kind of change and adapt to whatever is going on in the moment. Then release that leg back out and come back into Maha Mudra, and just see if you can feel how much that right hip is settled from having done the Padmasana. Then pull the leg up into Marichyasana and stretch the leg out. All right, same deal on the other side. You have all of the support you need. I'm just thinking I'm probably going to need to sit up on this height on the second side, but so I have it ready. But I'm going to give it a go, just because I'm kind of close and this hip is working a little bit better these days. Okay, so Maha Mudra. Those of you who do seated hip flow with me, this is a lot like seated hip flow. Janu Shirshasana. Janu Shirshasana. Then get your hands underneath your leg and bring your leg up into Ardha Baddha Padma Paschimottanasana. Okay, so the groin is better on this side, but my knee is much higher. And so it's higher than my pelvis. So I have to say, good experiment, but sit up on some height. So I have to come out of the pose and try again. Maha Mudra, Janu Shirshasana, Janu Shirshasana, Ardha Baddha Padma Paschimottanasana. The knee is almost down to the floor. I'm just going to take, as I'm sitting here in the upright stage, I'm just going to give myself a tiny little bit of support. Another thing you have to watch for when you're supporting the outer knee is sometimes people support it too much and they actually push the knee up. Okay? It's just filling up the space between the bottom of the knee and the floor. And then I know when I fold forward and get my leg, that release of the groin and the shift of the pelvis is going to let that knee go down to the floor. So I just push the block out, push it out of the way. Ardha Baddha Padma Paschimottanasana. And come out, pull the leg up into half Marichyasana, which we're going to work on next. And then stretch your legs out straight. Remove the belt blanket from underneath you. Lean back a little bit. And then lift your buttocks up into Purvottanasana and really just open that front groin. And lower yourself back down. Then Paschimottanasana. Now this one, actually try it. Again, in some ways, I don't quote unquote need height for Paschimottanasana. I mean, I can fold forward just fine. But when I actually take a little bit of height, there is a softness that comes that isn't there when I'm just sitting on the floor. And in that my own hips are tight and kind of irritated also. The softness is what you want to feel. I remember I was mentioning taking this other blanket roll, right? And you put it right on your pelvic bones. It doesn't have to be much. And so that way, when you fold forward into the concave backstage, it'll give you some space in that front pelvic bone. It should feel good on the front pelvic bone, but it also should feel very nice and broadening across the lower back. All right, then go ahead. We haven't done it yet, but we're getting toward the end of class. So go ahead and fold forward into full Paschimottanasana before we work toward a little bit of Marichyasana. And then do some work toward inversions. Good. Then come all the way back up and come into Dandasana. Okay. The other seated forward bendy twisty work that gets introduced this particular week is Marichyasana 1 and Marichyasana 2. Marichyasana 1 has a twisting element to it, but if you look at where it is presented in light and yoga, it's clearly presented with the forward bends. Vrityasana 3 is presented with the twists. Okay, so there is a twisting element that we'll do, but it is also a forward bend. I know that I need some height, so I'm sitting on my height. I'm not even, well, okay, I could try doing it on the floor just for the experiment. So here I am on the floor, and I'm going to lift my right leg up. Okay. And when I do that, I can feel that my lower back rounds and I'm not getting any release. In fact, my right groin at this point is kind of tightened. Okay. So don't want that. So I'm going to sit up on some height. And just by taking a little tri-folded blanket, I can get my upper back in and up a little bit, and my groin can release. Okay, so this is the upright stage of Marityasana 1. You can hold on to your knee and lift up. You can put your hands behind you and lift up. There is the turn where you make the wrap, but we'll work on that next week. We're going to work on a little bit of turn. Can you reach forward and get your foot and turn your torso away from your legs? So there's a little bit of that Jatara Parivartanasana action. Maybe you need the strap, but can you reach forward and get your foot here in Marityasana 1, just the first stage of the forward bending shape of the pose. And come back up, stretch that leg out, and do the same thing on the other side. So you're going to lift your left leg up. Much easier for me on this side, but I still can use the height. Lengthen up. You can push down on the knee or down on the shin to get some nice length. You can use your hands behind you to get length. Then reach forward, get your foot, turn a little bit, moving the abdomen from left to right. Then turn back the other way as you get your foot, or use the strap. Lengthen up through the side ribs, roll the shoulders back and lift the chest well. And then release. Okay, just for the heck of it, we're going to go toward Marityasana 2 legs. But for some people, that isn't going to be appropriate. Okay, so if in doing this, you say, oh, that hurts my knee. Oh, that hurts my foot. Oh, that hurts my hip. Oh, that bothers my brain. Any of those things, you have to be, your own kind of monitor in the room. Right? If that's too much, you can just go back and do any of the forward bends we've done before. Okay, so here's what Marityasana 2 looks like. You're going to take your right hand on the inside of your right knee, move the leg out to the side, lift the leg up. Okay. Then you have to somehow bring this leg up also into Padmasana. So I haven't been working on this lately, I can tell. So I'm not going any farther than that. I'm going to come out and stretch and try and do the other side. So bring the leg out to the side. Bring the leg into Padmasana. And then maybe you'll be able to lift the leg up into Vrityasana. Okay, I'm a little bit better on the side, but I'm still not anywhere near doing upright. Okay. Stretch your leg out. Stretch the other leg out. Let's try that one more time. Okay. So, either Mahamudra, Janu Shirshasana, or Ardha Padmasana. Then see, from Ardha Padmasana, maybe you can lean back a little bit to give yourself some room to bring the leg up. This side, I can't sit up straight. So I'm not lingering, but at least I put myself back into a relationship with the pose and stretch that leg out. All right, second side. So either Mahamudra, Janu Shirshasana, or Padmasana. Okay. You can stay there, or you can try, lean back a little bit, bring the leg up. On this side, I'm working toward being upright. And then stretch that leg out, stretch the other leg out, stretch that leg out, and then do a Purvottanasana, really open those front groins. Even throw your head back if you want. Then come down, get your blanket roll if you want it, and come into a Paschimottanasana. Make your leg action strong, lengthen through your side ribs. So we're going toward a little bit of work in Shirshasana and a little bit of work in Sarvangasana. So let this forward bend here be a preparation for the calmness of your mind that you're after in the inversions. All right, then come back up. Swing your legs off to the side. Put your hands into downward facing dog. Turn your biceps like we did in all of the seated forward bends. Turn your toes under. And then push back and come into Adho Mukha Svanasana. Now, way back at the beginning of class, we also did an Adho Mukha Svanasana. And know if you can have any inkling of memory about it. I just have a memory that we did it. But as I'm here in this downward facing dog, I can feel, wow, my hands are better on the floor. My lower back feels better. My legs are working much more, let's say, automatically. And my heels have gone down to the ground very firmly from the hamstring stretching of the forward bends. Just to increase the feeling of calmness in the brain and making this be a nice preparation for Shirshasana. If you have a brick nearby and you want to put it on your forehead, it's a very soothing sensation for the brain. And walk forward till your feet are right underneath your hips. Let your head just hang. Well, you can let your head hang, or you could also let your crown of your head be supported by the brick. That also feels nice. But I actually wanted us to do just briefly a Pada Hastasana because it's so nice for the hands in terms of preparing for Shirshasana. And so stick your hands underneath your feet. Move your thumbs toward each other, your little fingers away from each other. And then just let your head hang. Then release your hands. Before you do the Shirshasana, one more downward facing dog. And feel how much that just brief Pada Hastasana has done for the connection of your hands on the floor. And walk forward till your feet are right underneath your hips. Place your hands on your pelvic bones. Roll your shoulder bones back and come all the way up. All right. So now it's time for Shirshasana. The two inversions, variations that he does introduce this week are Parshva Shirshasana and Ekapada Shirshasana. If those are in your capacity and you want to do them while we're in the Shirshasana, you can. You can do Shirshasana against the wall or in the middle of the room. And if for whatever reason you're not doing Shirshasana, I would suggest just repeating Uttanasana with your head supported by a brick. When I was down there doing that, it felt very soothing. Right? So that's the plan. So everyone's going to come into whatever their Shirshasana is. I'm going to take a look at you. So, since I'm teaching inversions afterwards. So we did a lot of forward bending. Well, not full forward bending, but we did a lot of work in the hips, a lot of movement toward forward bending. So as you're here, just see, I'm just sitting and looking at you. That's all. I'm just closer to you. So that's why I'm up here. Okay. You can just go in. And if you do not do Shirshasana for any reason, okay, you can do Uttanasana, standing forward bend. You could do downward facing dog again. You could even go into like a supine pose and do. There you go, Kathy. That's coming along. Nice job. Make sure you're lifting your shoulders when you do that, Kathy, though. Or you can lay down on the floor with your legs out wide, lay down in a bolster, anything that. Let's see, Melinda, it looks a little bit like your left elbow has gone into the left a little bit too much. Other way. It's Melinda, come down and reset your hands. They both actually look like they're a little bit off center. Okay. Chaya, that looks good, right on the money there. Yeah, that looks pretty good, Gabe. Move your legs to the right though a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Kathy, now that you're up, move your legs to the right and really lift up through that left shoulder. That looks fine, Vicky. Good, Laura. Oh, sorry, Leanne, that's Leanne. Laura's over there. All right, good, Laura. Just going into Sarvangasana also fine. And Karen, that looks like a really good setup for you too. Okay. I know, Vicky, you just got up there, so if you want to try again and try again, go ahead and do that. Everyone else, though, keep your shoulders well lifted, come down. You can stay where you are, Laura, because we're going toward, if you want, for a couple seconds, we're going to actually, instead of Sarvangasana, we're going to do Setu off the bolster. Okay. All right. So there's this really great pose that's called Setu Bandha. And I just wanted to do it today instead of Sarvangasana, just so everyone knows what it is. Okay. Because just like there are reasons, all sorts of reasons that headstand might not be appropriate, ranging, for all kinds of things, ranging from, being on your cycle, certain eye conditions, certain heart conditions, sometimes shoulder, sometimes neck. There are plenty of reasons why you shouldn't do Shirshasana. Or you might not at some time and you might at other times. Yeah. Simple, and now you know what to do when you aren't doing Shirshasana. We're giving you some options. Same thing with Sarvangasana. There are lots of things to do, but this one in particular, everyone really should find a way, talking to myself also, okay, to do what I'm going to show you now, Setu Bandha off of the bolster in some form every day. Yeah. Mr. Iyengar calls it a boon for humanity. And he also says there's no one who should not do this pose. He also says this is a pose for everyone. Yeah. And then if you read about various effects of it online, it's good for high blood pressure, it's good for low blood pressure, it's good for regulating thyroid, it's good for asthma, allergy, anxiety, all the things. And so why not do it? In my own life, a lot of times I will do it after Sarvangasana. And sometimes if I do this before Sarvangasana, we'll say, oh, that's close enough to Sarvangasana. But you can put it either before shoulder stand or after shoulder stand. But I have a roll for my neck just because I like that. Okay. But the trick of it is you have to measure your breaths, okay, before you sit down, and hope you kind of get them right. Because you have to go down with bent legs. And now this is the part that's really key, is the bolster supporting right at the top of the chest, or in the middle of the chest, but the back of the head and the shoulders are on the floor. And my understanding of how all this works is that the position that the heart finds itself in the thoracic cavity, in this position with support, is very soothing for the heart, and as a result, it's soothing for the brain, soothing for all the adrenal glands and everything. And this is the important part, getting this set. It's got a little bit of Jalandhara Bandha too, which is also soothing for the brain. Once you're set in your upper body, then you stretch your legs out straight. Okay. I have mine personally on bricks right now. There are many ways to set up this pose. This one for me is just the easiest. And this is called, when I say bolster Setu Bandha, this is what I mean by bolster Setu Bandha. You've got the spine-wise support. The shoulders are on the floor. I like the blanket roll underneath my neck, and you work your legs. You can put even a strap around your legs if you want to. And it's very calming, soothing pose. You can set a timer, do it for 5 to 8 minutes. It's a nice pose to watch the breath in too, because you've got the nice support of the inhalation, but hopefully if you've got it set up right, the abdomen nicely draws in on the exhalation. So too Viparita Karmani. So if you weren't able to do shoulder stand, again, for whatever reason, that could be neck, that could be shoulder stand, is actually not as challenging on the heart conditions as Shirshasana is, but if you did this and then did Viparita Karmani, you're basically getting pretty much all the benefits of Sarvangasana without it being any strain on the neck. But this is called bolster Setu Bandha. And just as I was laying there doing it, I could feel how calming and soothing it is. I've since gotten up to kind of look at all set up. Leanne, I think maybe just move the tiniest bit toward your head side. So your shoulders are just a little bit. It just looked like your head was getting thrown back slightly. Yeah, that looks better. That looks good, Karen. Good, Vicky. Nice, Melinda. Good, Laura. Can't totally see you, Kathy, but like your leg action looks fine. That looks good, Gay. And nice, Chaya. Very nice work. Okay. I would say for the next time any one of you do that pose, if you also take the time to put the belt around your legs, okay? You don't have to keep the legs together, though you can work that way. Just like put a belt loop around your feet, okay? It'll keep your feet from turning out. And I wouldn't get up and do it now, okay? But if I were to make one big global correction that most of you need would be to make your feet go a little bit more straight up and down. All right, then keeping this nice inner quietude as much as you can, bend your knees, slide straight off toward your head side, if you have the room to do it. The best dismount off of this pose is to go push straight off toward your head side so that your lower back ends up flat on the floor. Because sometimes this pose is a little bit stressful on the lower back. Right. Then you can straighten your legs out into Shavasana. If you don't have room to do that in your own yoga space, it's not the end of the world. Okay? You can just roll off of the setup also. But the sliding toward your head side really does feel quite nice on the lower back. And then just be in last 2 or 3 minutes of class, just be in whatever part of Shavasana, the stage of Shavasana you want, that's not the right word, Shavasana experience you want to have. You could have a bolster underneath your knees since the bolster's there. You could put the bolster underneath your chest if you want. You could put the bolster on your thighs, all kinds of things. Let your eyes release into the back of your head. Your tongue release away from the roof of your mouth. Unclench your jaw. Let the back of the throat release. Let the sides of the throat release. Let the base of the throat release. Let your ears draw inward. Become quiet within. From that still space within, inhale. Consciously use your inhalations to bring an awareness of your true self with you as you go about your work in the world. Place your hands on your rib cage, bend your knees, roll over to your right side, and use your hands to push yourself back up. Sit up straight and tall. Close your eyes and fold your palms together to your heart. In gratitude to the benefit you receive from your practice of yoga. In gratitude to the people you have the opportunity to learn and study and practice yoga with. And in gratitude to the lineage of Hatha Yoga itself, as practiced by BKS Iyengar, reaching back to the sages of India, and down through a line of teachers and students to you, here on the mat, in Austin, Texas, or wherever you happen to be in the world, through the miracle of Zoom. Namaste.
Namaste.